In a humble basement room with just one window lived Martuin Avdiej, the shoemaker. Through that window, he would watch the passing world, though he could only see people's feet. Yet for Martuin, that was enough. You see, after years of mending boots in this same spot, he had grown to recognize folks just by their footwear. Martuin was known throughout the district as an honest craftsman. He worked with quality materials, charged fair prices, and always kept his word. "If I can finish your boots by then, I'll take the work," he would say thoughtfully. "If not, I won't make promises I can't keep." His reputation brought him steady work, and people trusted him. But as the years passed, Martuin's thoughts turned more and more toward matters of the soul. His life had known deep sorrow. His beloved wife had died years ago, leaving him with their 3-year-old son, Kapitoshka. Though at first he considered sending the boy to live with relatives, his heart wouldn't allow it. "It would be too hard for my Kapitoshka to live with strangers," his voice heavy with emotion. So he had kept his son close, moving them into this basement room to start their life together. But God's plans were different from Martuin's hopes. Little Kapitoshka, who had brought such joy to his father's life, fell ill one day. After a week of suffering, the boy died, leaving Martuin alone with his grief. Martuin's grief was so deep that he began to question God. "Take me instead," he would pray in anguish. "Why take my only son and leave an old man behind?" His sorrow led him away from church, away from his faith. Then one day, an elderly wanderer from the monastery of Troitsa came to visit. As they talked, Martuin poured out his sorrows. "I have no desire to live. I only wish for death. That is all I pray for now." The old wanderer spoke softly. "You don't talk right, Martuin. We must not judge God's doings. The world moves not by our will, but by God's. Your son's death and your life, both are part of his plan. Your despair comes from wanting to live for your own happiness." "But what else is there to live for?" Martuin asked despondently. "We must live for God, Martuin," the wanderer replied with quiet certainty. "He gives you life, and for his sake, you must live. When you begin to live for him, you won't grieve over anything. All will seem easy." "But how?" Martuin's voice was barely a whisper. "How can one live for God?" The old man's answer was simple. "Christ has taught us how. Can you read? Buy a testament and read it. Everything is explained there." These words kindled something in Martuin's heart. That very day, he went out and bought a New Testament with large print. Though he meant to read only on holidays at first, he found himself drawn to its pages every evening. The more he read, the more clearly he understood God's purpose for him, and gradually, his heavy heart grew lighter. Where once he had lain down each night thinking of his lost Kapitoshka, with sighs and groans, now his evening prayer became different. Glory to thee, Lord, thy will be done." Martuin's entire life began to change. He no longer sought comfort in the public houses or brandy. Gone were the days of shouting and loose talk. Instead, his life took on a peaceful rhythm. Working by day, reading his beloved testament, by lamplight at night. One evening, Martuin was particularly absorbed in the Gospel of Luke, reading late into the night. His eyes moved across the verses. "And unto him that smiteth thee, on the one cheek offer also the other. Give to every man that asketh of thee." He read further, coming to Christ's words about building a house upon rock or sand. Removing his spectacles, Martuin leaned on the table, lost in thought. Is my house built on the rock or on the sand? He wondered aloud. 'Tis well if on the rock. It seems easy when you're alone, but in the world, it's different. Yet I shall still struggle on, he said with quiet determination. Help me, Lord. He continued reading about the sinful woman who washed Jesus' feet with her tears. The words touched something deep in his soul. Thou gavest me no water for my feet. Thou gavest me no kiss. As sleep began to overtake him, Martuin heard something, or thought he heard something. Martuin. He startled awake. Who's there? He called out, looking around the empty room. Again he dozed, and again came the voice. Martuin, look for me tomorrow on the street. I am coming. When Martuin woke fully, he couldn't be sure if he had dreamed the voice or truly heard it. But as he prepared for bed, a strange anticipation filled his heart. At daybreak, Martuin rose and began his morning routine. He lit the stove, prepared his shchi and kasha, and set up the samovar. As he sat down by his window to work, he couldn't shake the memory of that mysterious voice. Well, such things have been. He found himself watching the passing feet more intently than usual, hoping to glimpse something or someone special. First came the dvornik in new felt boots, then the water carrier. An old soldier named Stepanuich appeared, struggling to shovel snow with his weathered hands. Martuin watched the old soldier laboring in the cold. I must be getting crazy in my old age. Here's Stepanuich clearing snow, and I'm imagining Christ coming to visit me. Yet something moved him to knock on his window. Come in, he called warmly to Stepanuich. Come warm yourself with some tea. The old soldier entered, shaking off snow. Don't trouble to wipe your feet. I'll clean up myself. We're used to such things. Sit down and have some tea. As they sat together, Martuin kept glancing out the window. Are you expecting someone? Stepanuich asked curiously. Martuin hesitated, then spoke softly. Am I expecting someone? I'm ashamed even to tell whom I expect. Something happened last night. And as the steam rose from their cups, Martuin shared his story about reading the gospel and hearing the mysterious voice. You see, brother, Martuin continued warmly, I was reading about how Christ visited the Pharisee, but the Pharisee didn't receive him properly. If he came to someone like me, his voice grew thoughtful, would I know how to receive him? Stepanuich listened, tears forming in his eyes as Martuin spoke of Christ's love for simple folk. He chose fishermen and sinners like us, Martuin said gently. He said, whoever wants to be first shall be servant to all. After Stepanuich left, Martuin returned to his work by the window, but his eyes kept drifting to the street, watching, waiting. Then he spotted a woman in thin woolen stockings, struggling against the cold with a baby in her arms. She stood near his window, trying to wrap the infant better, but her summer clothes offered little warmth. Hey, my good woman, he called out with concern. Come in where it's warm. The woman was startled to see an elderly man in an apron and spectacles inviting her in, but desperation led her to accept. I have no milk for him, she confessed weakly. I haven't eaten since morning. Sit by the stove, he said warmly, and warm yourself while you nurse the little one. I'll tend to the baby, he offered, taking the infant. I once had children of my own. I know how to handle them. Martuin smiled at the child, making gentle sounds, though he had no teeth. He waved his finger playfully before the baby's face, careful not to touch him with his work-stained hand. The baby's cries turned to smiles bringing joy to both the mother and Martuin. As the woman ate, she shared her story. "I'm a soldier's wife. They sent my husband away 7 months ago. No word since. Lost my job as a cook when the baby came. No one wants to hire a woman with an infant." Her voice trailed off. Martuin noticed her shivering. "Haven't you any warm clothes?" he asked. "I pawned my last shawl yesterday," she replied, "for just 20 kopecks. Wait." He went to his trunk and pulled out an old coat. "Nah, it's not much, but it might help." The woman took the coat, tears welling in her eyes. "May Christ bless you, little grandfather. He must have sent me to your window. My baby would have frozen." "Take this too," pressing a 20 kopeck piece into her hand. "Redeem your shawl. This is why he sent me to look through the window today," sharing his dream from the night before. After the woman left, Martuin returned to his work, but now with even greater anticipation. Each darkening of his window drew his attention. Suddenly, he heard a commotion outside. An old apple seller was scolding a boy who had tried to steal an apple. "Let me go," the boy cried out. "I didn't take it." Martuin rushed outside, nearly stumbling on the stairs, his spectacles falling off in his haste. "Let him go, babushka. Forgive him, for Christ's sake." "I'll forgive him so he won't forget it," the old woman said angrily. "I'm taking this little villain to the police. Let him go. He won't do it again." Then, turning to the boy, he said firmly but kindly, "Ask the babushka's forgiveness, and don't ever do this again. I saw you take the apple." The boy burst into tears, asking forgiveness. Martuin took an apple from the basket, offering it to the boy. "Here's an apple for you. I'll pay for it, babushka." "You ruined them that way," the old woman scolded. "He should be punished to remember it." Martuin spoke thoughtfully. Babushka, that's right according to our judgment, but not according to God's. If he should be whipped for an apple, what should happen to us for our sins?" The old woman fell silent. Martuin told her the parable of the master who forgave a great debt, while the forgiven man refused to forgive a small one. As they talked, the old woman's heart softened. She shared stories about her grandchildren, especially little Aksintka, who called her dearest babushka. "Let me carry your bag, babushka," the boy suddenly offered. "It's on my way." Martuin watched them walk away together, the boy carrying the heavy bag, both chatting like old friends. As darkness fell, Martuin returned to his work. He saw the lamplighter pass by, illuminating the street lamps one by one. "Time to make a light," he murmured, hanging his own small lamp. After finishing his work, he reached for his beloved Testament. Though he meant to open it where he'd left his leather marker, it fell open to a different page. Suddenly, he heard what seemed like someone moving behind him. In the dark corner of his room, shadows appeared to take shape. "Martuin, did you not recognize me?" "Who?" he asked, his voice trembling slightly. "It was I," said the voice. And from the shadows stepped Stepanuich, smiling before fading like a cloud. "And it was I," came another voice. The woman with her baby appeared, both smiling before vanishing. "And it was I." The old apple woman and the boy stepped forward, their faces bright with joy, before they too disappeared. Martuin's heart filled with joy as he crossed himself and read the words that lay before him. "For I was hungry, and ye gave me meat. I was thirsty, and ye gave me drink. I was a stranger, and ye took me in." And lower on the page, "Inasmuch as ye have done it unto one of the least of these my brethren, ye have done it unto me." and Martuin understood that his dream had not deceived him. The Savior had indeed come to him that day, and he had received him.